Harumade Kururu, or Harukuru Spring Has Come True, is a visual novel that Sekai Project translated nearly a decade after announcing they would. It was originally developed by Sumikko Soft, but more importantly, the scenario writer is Ryoriichi Watanabe, one of the writers for Aokana, especially its flying circus mechanics, Misaki's Route, and Extra 2. I got interested in Harukuru after hearing about its genre shift and seeing people in the localization industry hype it up, so I wanted to do a quick non-spoiler review and answer an important question. Is the 17+ version, or the all ages version with no 18+ patch on Steam, actually worth reading? The story starts with a polyamorous harem bait setup, where the pink-haired main girl Shizuka tells the group that due to their circumstances, they should start an official orgy relationship. This happens within the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, and weirdly enough, the girls seem more into it than the protagonist Kazuki himself. I'm personally glad I read the 17+ version, since I imagine the actual H scenes that would have happened early on would be your typical eroge writing fare. After this setup, the game leans into goofy, ridiculous dialogue, especially of a very sexual nature, but there's also some foreshadowing into the heroines' true personalities. This harem route lasts for an hour or two at most. Eventually, we get a flashback that explains how the characters ended up in the situation. Turns out all 5 characters started with amnesia and, big surprise for a Japanese-made visual novel, are trapped in a high school setting mixed with a dorm or a hot spring in the middle of nowhere. There's no one else around, no signs of life, and no proof of where or when they are. The only notable details are little notepads describing the characters and the fact that the date is supposedly the year 9999. Apparently, despite them being stranded, they found a note saying they would be saved in 3 months. Within the first several hours, you will realize all 5 main characters are at least a little crazy or broken inside. Kazuki, the protagonist, is consistently noted by both himself and the heroines to be broken. He has a defect that prevents him from making more than one deadpan expression, making it hard for others to read his emotions. The girls assume he's constantly angry when really, he's just passive with a tendency to be too self-sacrificial. Shizuka, the most notable heroine early on, is charismatic but blunt and weird, and the one who kickstarts the whole harem bait premise. Once the flashback kicks in, you get signs she's not all there, like how she'll occasionally wield a crowbar almost like she's trying to be Gordon Freeman. The other 3 heroines are also, to varying degrees, crazy. Suzune drops the most stupid, insensitive jokes even in serious situations. Akio, despite seeming like the most sane one, has a surprising interest in sexual stuff despite her serious and seemingly naive personality. And well, they all agreed to a polyamorous orgy within 3 months of knowing each other while having amnesia, so that should say something. While the harem arc goes a bit too long and the slice of life in the flashback can be a bit cringe, once the serious parts of the story get going, it's surprisingly engaging. Sure, there are still weird shaloppy parts, like how getting into one route requires deciding whether to grab a girl's boobs or not, or how all 5 characters have a weird habit of making horny comments at the most random moments. But Harukuru gets surprisingly introspective on how these 5 characters have to live together despite all having some kind of odd personality defect. There's decent character development for all of them that feels organic enough for their strange personalities. The pacing is solid, roughly 20 hours between the common route and 3 main routes. There's just enough slice of life to get to know the characters, but also a decent amount of serious psychological exploration and build-up regarding the true nature of this seemingly sci-fi world. There's also clearly a multi-route mystery aspect to the story that's consistently built up. As someone who likes mystery visual novels, this part was definitely a treat. Once you learn more about the sci-fi elements, it's surprisingly well thought out, something that could theoretically happen in real life, though there are a few unexplained potential plot holes. The one main consistent flaw is I don't buy most of the romance when it happens. It just moves too quickly. Romance is admittedly a minor aspect of the story, but it does affect character motivations, so it's hard to buy into them when it feels this rushed. It feels like some of the later plot twists try to justify the rushed romance, but I still don't buy it. There's also one particular arc where a couple of characters take part in incredibly cringe, clearly fake sibling play for almost the entire route. It not only ruins the romance, but also sours my opinion on the otherwise interesting serious reveals in that arc. Overall, Harumade Kururu feels like a mix of the serious parts of Cross Channel, Higurashi, Island, and Danganronpa, with humor ranging somewhere between the goofier parts of Aokana and the degenerate, stupid comedy of Asa Project titles. That sums up my thoughts on the story itself. A solid, unique experience. Maybe not the best characters ever or the hardest hitting emotional stuff, but it explores interesting themes that even many story-heavy visual novels don't touch. It also balances dark psychological storytelling without going full Nitro Plus levels of edgy or over the top. Just for the story alone, I give Harukuru an 8 out of 10. Now onto the other main hook of this video. Is the 17+ Steam version, which removes explicit sexual content from the original release, still worth reading? For reference, Sekai Project agreed to translate the game, but was requested to do an all-ages version with upscaled resolution and updated scenario writing from the original writer. However, the developer did not provide upscaled versions of the 18+ CGs. So if you want to read the 18+ version, you would have to buy it separately. You cannot patch the all-ages Steam version to add back 18+ content. It's frustrating that there's no definitive edition with both the updated resolution and scenario writing while keeping the original explicit sex scenes. Miscommunication and Sumikko Soft, probably inspired by developers like Giga and Type Moon who try to pretend their eroge roots don't exist, may have played a role in this. But all I can do is judge the quote-unquote all-ages version on its own merits. That said, there's still a 17+ patch from Sekai Project's website that restores basically almost all the other content. So, is this version without H-scenes still worth reading? Personally, I'd say yes. As someone who's read many erotic H-scenes in the 15+ years I've been reading visual novels, I can already tell these weren't particularly plot important. Instead of holding control to fast forward generic hentai tier dialogue, I was able to get convenient scene transitions to the next plot point. The 17+ patch keeps plenty of uncensored sex jokes and implied moments. If you really care about H-scenes for the self-pleasure part of it, then sure, maybe you might feel like you're missing out, but if you just want story, you're really not losing much. If you really have FOMO or fear of missing out, you could wait for the full separate 18+ version by Sekai Project, or you could watch the assumedly spoiler-heavy retrospective Amelie Dori did on the 18+ version of Harumade Kururu. That said, long story short, Harukuru is a fun, unique, but not amazing read. If you don't like seeing cute heroines go through dark psychological stuff, don't want a potentially depressing sci-fi premise, then maybe read something else.